Good morning, everybody. Our topic today is deformities and their management in the adult patient. Deformities in general may arise from either an abnormality in the bone, which is like a most commonly a malunited fracture, or the joint which connects the bones, or it may arise from various soft tissues that may cross the joint. Adult deformities are usually not soft tissue in nature. They are usually arising either from a joint or from a bone. Deformities which usually arise from a joint includes various deformities due to dislocations and subluxations, those due to muscle imbalance, those caused by tethering of the soft tissues like muscles and tendons, those causing by contractures of the other soft tissues like capsules. Long-standing arthritis can result in deformities, and postural abnormalities can result in deformities in long-standing cases. Deformities that arise in the bone include those caused by malunited fractures and abnormal metabolic bone diseases which may cause various deformities. This is a clinical photograph just to show you the image, just to show you the various deformities that can arise from a joint level. On the top left, you have the dislocation which is causing a deformity. In the top row in the middle, we can see the muscle imbalance causing an equus deformity. On the top right, we have quadriceps getting tethered within a fracture site, causing a quadriceps contracture. On the bottom left, we have a contracture of the fascia like a Dupuytren's contracture. On the center bottom row, we have the posterior capsular contracture causing a fixoflexion deformity of the knee. On the bottom right, we have what is called the hallux valgus, where a tight foot brace, foot shoes results in postural changes in the foot. Deformities in adults are either usually due to arising, classified as those arising from axial skeleton or appendicular skeleton. Axial skeleton is the spine, and appendicular in adult are usually the rheumatoid, osteoarthritis, and post-traumatic deformities. Spinal deformities can be of three types: scoliosis, kyphosis, and lordosis. So scoliosis, normally when you view a patient from the front, there is a minimal curvature in the coronal plane. This curvature less than 10 degrees is normal. When it's an abnormal sideways curving of the spine, it is called scoliosis. People with scoliosis have a spine that curves too much. Either it may result in a C-shaped curve, or when it is so severe, it may produce secondary curves resulting in S-shaped curve. Classification.
So this is a recording or you're repeating, sir?
It's recording, sir. Classification, it can be either non-structural scoliosis, structural scoliosis. Non-structural scoliosis is a transient one, which can be easily correctable, like the postural scoliosis, sciatic scoliosis, etc. Structural scoliosis is more like a permanent deformity. It is caused either by congenital causes or neuromuscular scoliosis. Symptoms, usually asymptomatic. Sometimes they may have low backache or tired feeling after sitting or standing for long times. On examination, we may be able to ascertain uneven hips or shoulders, and the spinal curve can be ascertained. This is what we see on clinical examination. The shoulders will be at uneven level, hips will be at uneven level, and the curvature of the spine can be ascertained. Okay. So now we should know what is a Cobb's angle. A Cobb's angle is a measurement of the severity of scoliosis. This angle measures the angle subtended between the upper border of the most proximal vertebra of the deformity and the lower border of the most distal vertebra of the deformity. So this gives an idea about the severity of the scoliosis. So everybody should know about the Cobb's angle. Next is the rhesus sign. Why should we know about the rhesus sign in the scoliosis? Rhesus sign is something linked to the pelvis. Here, whenever there is iliac apophysis growth, it is graded into 5 stages. Depending upon the stage, we can identify the remaining growth potential for this patient. So if there is a scoliosis, we can understand whether the scoliosis will worsen or not with growth. So to know that, you should know about the rhesus sign also. And rotation of the vertebra, it is not just a single dimensional scoliosis, is not a single dimensional deformity. It has multi-dimensional deformities. 3 dimensions should be taken in. So we should always have a look into the rotation of the vertebra also. Treatment options for scoliosis, the various bracing options we have, and when there is a severe deformity, we can correct the deformity and fuse the spine with pedicle screws and rods. Kyphosis is an excessive backward convexity of the spine. Usually two types, round kyphosis and angular kyphosis. Round kyphosis is a gentle curvature of the back, usually seen in osteoporosis senile kyphosis. Angular kyphosis is a sharp backward prominence of the spinal column. It may be either like a knuckle type, which is a very sharp prominence at a single spinal level, or a gibbous, which is a relatively gentle curve due to tuberculosis. Causes postural. Of course, we said compensatory. When there is an exaggerated lumbar lordosis, there can be a compensatory kyphosis. Ankylosing spondylitis, osteoporosis, the most commonest. Coming to deformities of the appendicular skeleton in the adults, most commonly we can think about rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, and fractures, malrelated. Rheumatoid can cause various deformities in the hand and the foot. So the various deformities in the hand are the ulnar drift of the hand, the boutonniere deformity, and the swan neck deformity. Ulnar drift of the hand. Here the image says everything. It is primarily a pathology of the metacarpophalangeal joint, where the synovitis weakens the dorsal and radial capsular restraints, so that the finger deviates at the MCP level ulnarwards. The interosseous muscle also goes for contracture, which causes the ulnar deviation more, and the proximal interphalangeal joint is going for hyperextension, and MCP is in flexion. This image shows everything: MCP flexion, ulnar deviation, PIP hyperextension. This is called the ulnar drift, which is seen in long-standing rheumatoid patients. In severe long-standing cases, other soft tissue changes may also occur. What you are seeing here is the extensor tendon, dorsal extensor tendons are all getting subluxed towards the ulnar side. They come to lie into the rib space, so that their effectiveness will be eventually lost, and they will go for secondary deformities. Next is the boutonniere deformity. This again is an involvement of the metacarpophalangeal joint, which leads to this classical deformity. The proximal phalanx actually subluxates on the metacarpal head, and the MCP joint goes for flexion, and the interphalangeal joint of the thumb goes for hyperextension. So this is a classical boutonniere deformity. What is swan neck deformity? Here the pathology is the carpometacarpal joint, where there is a synovitis which causes the metacarpal head to subluxate. So the metacarpal head, the base of the metacarpal comes to lie on the dorsal surface of the carpus, which results in a hyperextension of the metacarpal phalangeal joint like a swan neck. The deformities in the toes. These are the deformities, especially the hammer toe and the claw toes are more common in rheumatoid patients. Mallet toe can also occur. The hammer toe. What is hammer toe? The image with the bones visible on the left side shows everything. There is extension of the DAP joint, but flexion at the IP joint, PAP joint. What is claw toe? Like a claw hand, there is a hyperextension of the metatarsophalangeal joint and flexion of both proximal interphalangeal joint and distal interphalangeal joints. What is a mallet toe? Again, like a mallet finger, it is a flexion deformity involving the distal interphalangeal joint alone. This is another deformity which is seen in these patients, which is a hallux valgus. When the grade 2 angulation is more severe, at the apex of the angulation, the soft tissue may get irritated and it may produce a swelling called the bunion. Treatment options for rheumatoid conditions. Medical management, we all know that is the main standard treatment. We give NSAIDs for acute stages, disease-modifying anti-rheumatoid drugs for disease remission, steroids for control. Whenever a patient is going to take earlier medical management, this can actually prevent most of the deformities. Delayed treatment may result in deformities. Regarding the other orthopedic management for rheumatoid, it can be either non-operative or operative. Non-operative in the form of splinting, operative in the form of various preventive, reconstructive, and salvage procedures. Coming to the OA&E, which is most common in India. Classically, we see a varus deformity of the knee. The varus deformity of the knee joint is fairly common in OA&E and causes an abnormal distribution of the weight-bearing stresses within the joint. The stress is concentrated medially, accelerating more degenerative changes in the medial compartment of the joint. These are some X-rays to show the degenerative changes which are occurring in the knee joint. We can see the right side knee. The medial tibial condyle is almost half eroded in severe stages, producing a severe varus knee. And the image on the right shows the left knee, which is again showing a varus deformity. Coming to treatment options available for varus knee due to OA, a variety of procedures have been described for the treatment, including arthroscopic lavage and debridement, up to total knee replacement. We should know about what is called the other osteotomy procedures which are available for deformity correction. You should know about high tibial osteotomy, which is the widely performed procedure to treat the medial knee arthrosis. Coming to deformities that can occur due to fractures, these are the gross mentioned about the most common deformities that are occurring in fractures which are getting malunited. One is the gunstock deformity, which occurs in supracondylar fractures of the humerus, the cubitus valgus, which is seen in a fracture non-union of the lateral condyle of the humerus, dinner fork deformity, seen in Colles fracture, mallet finger deformity, whenever there is an acute injury causing avulsion of the extensor tendon from the base of the distal phalanx, coxa vara, it occurs in malunited intertrochanteric fractures, genu valgum, in long-standing condylar fractures of the tibia, varus or valgus deformities at the ankle also. This is the couple of clinical photographs to show various deformities. On the top left, you see the gunstock deformity, which is classically seen in malunited supracondylar fractures, like a person who is holding a long barrel gun. On the top right, you see the cubitus valgus deformity. In this girl, it is due to a lateral condyle fracture, which has gone for non-union. On the bottom left, you see the mallet finger deformity. This is the classical mallet finger deformity. In the image below the finger, you can see that the extensor tendon to the distal phalanx is ruptured, causing the deformity. On the bottom right, we have one deformity called the dinner fork deformity. This dinner fork deformity is classically seen, as we all know, in Colles fracture. Other bone diseases which all can cause deformities. Metabolic bone diseases like rickets, we all know the rickety grocery, the knock knees, osteomalacia we know. Endocrine disorders can cause secondary osteoporosis and bone deformities. Other conditions like Paget's disease can also cause bony deformities. Coming to the treatment options available in general for most of the deformities, it can be either non-operative or operative. Non-operative methods are usually suitable for soft tissue contractures, which consists of gentle stretching of the soft tissues and then maintaining the correction by splints. These include, one is manipulative correction. These are all soft tissue corrections are all mostly in children. Just for mention, we are telling it here. Manipulative correction, which is done for club foot. Wedging cast, for whenever there is a deformity, we can cut a wedge. Whenever the deformity is there and the POP is applied, we can correct the deformity inside the POP itself. We cut a wedge in the plaster, then correct the deformity and again reinforce the plaster. It may correct the deformity. Traction, gradual traction can stretch out and contracted tissues and subsequently maintain the correction in splints. Various splints are available which can permit gradual stretching of the soft tissues. Coming to the operative methods which are available for correcting deformities. One is soft tissue release. The contracted soft tissues, wherever be it, can be released like a quadriceps plasty or something like that. And once the tethering is removed, the joint movements will be fully achieved. Number two is osteotomy. Osteotomy is used for correcting bony deformities. The deformed bone is cut at a particular location and suitably realigned to maintain the proper anatomical alignment and fixed in the corrected position. This is an image to show how an osteotomy is being performed. The image on the left is a normal tibia. The center image is a deformed tibia where an osteotomy is marked. After that, complete correction is being done and it will be stabilized with some form of stabilization, like a plate or screws, or it could be an Ilizaro or something like that. This is a clinical example how a child who has developed Genu valgum is now corrected with supracondylar osteotomy on both sides. Another option is the arthrodesis, which is fusion of the joint. This is usually used when the joint is not only deformed, but also the joint surfaces have been damaged beyond repair, so that you can't be able to get a functional joint. So you go for arthrodesis, which is a fusion of the joint. Next is arthroplasty, which is reconstructing a joint with the artificial prosthesis. Saying about deformity correction, one can never forget to mention about what is called Illy-Zero's technique. This is a technique of compression distraction osteogenesis, which also helps in correcting the deformities in multidimensional planes. Now a broad overlook as to how to go about managing a particular deformity case. Whenever you come across a patient with a deformity, you take an X-ray. If there are no bony changes in the X-ray, but the deformity is there, it's most probably a soft tissue contracture, which can be managed either by non-operative methods or by operative methods. Whenever bone changes are present, you review the X-ray again. If the joint is okay, joint is absolutely normal, that means the deformity is not in the joint, it is in the bone somewhere. So for which we can do a corrective osteotomy, Illy-Zero, etc. If the joint is damaged, it means that we have to do something for the joint now. The problem is not in the bone, it is in the joint. So we have two options then. One is the arthrodesis, where we can fuse the joint. Another is the arthroplasty, where we can use an artificial implant and revise the joint. This is in broad about the management protocol for the flowchart for managing a deformity patient. Thank you. Treatment of scoliosis, as we, I'll just put up the slide again. It can be either managed conservatively with various bracing techniques available, or when the involvement is severe, we can go for a correction of the deformity with fixation in the form of pedicle screws and rods. So these are the treatment modalities available for These are the treatment modalities available for treating a scoliosis patient. This particular name called the Milwaukee brace, you should remember. And the surgical option is they correct the deformity and fuse the spine using pedicle screws and rods. Anybody having any other doubts?
Okay, thank you everyone.